Alright, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the Writer's Bookshelf. So today we are going to be taking a look at another plotting book. If you're familiar with the channel, you know that I like to start each season with kind of a primer, going back through the basics on how to plot a story, how to tell a story well, and to make sure you know you're on the right foot. And because it's really easy to get lost when you're writing, especially if you have an imagination that's wild and just wants to go wherever it wants. And basically what we want to do is make sure that we stay on the right track. So before I get into all the genre stuff, which will be coming fairly soon, I do want to just go back and remind you guys that there are books out there that can get you plugged back in with both feet on the ground. And so today's book, The Plot Whisperer by Alderson, is one of those books. And I want to start by saying that I actually read this book years ago, but I read it when I was on the job, essentially, because we had some downtime. And the problem with doing that is sometimes you get all these distractions where you kind of get pulled in all these directions, and it's very difficult to focus. This is one of those books where I think you probably want to focus on. So I actually went back and reread it. I rarely read books twice. This is one of the ones I went back to read to make sure I remembered what I missed, and I'm glad I did. Because this book actually has a lot of great foundational work, but it also reminds us that we have two halves of the brain, which obviously that's a given. We have we know that just based off any regular psychology course. But what this does is it reminds us that we can use both halves of the brain to help tell a unified story. There's one side that's creative, one side that's analytical, and so this is going to go through in the early chapters showing how those two work together. Why is that important? Well, because most of us fall into one of two camps, theoretically. I mean, some of us will go into like a middle ground. But I'm sure you've heard the term plotters and pantsers. Plotters are the ones who like to outline ahead of time, and the pantsers are the ones who have an unfortunate title attached to their names because somebody thought that pantser was a good word to describe organic or dynamic writing, or unearthing, whatever you want to call it. As you probably know, I hate the word pantser, but I still use it because we all know it by now. It's a horrible existence to have to use words you hate in order to make a point. But anyway, point being is that it does recognize that there's two types of writers, and both writers can use both halves of the brain to accomplish kind of the same deal. So I feel that's kind of enlightening for anyone who's struggling with a particular way of approaching a story. But it's not even really about that. What The Plot Whisperer is about, it's about plotting, but it's about plotting with purpose and whatnot. And we haven't really done too many outlining books in this series so far, and this one is kind of an outline book. There's actually another one I want to focus on later on in the season if I can get my hands on the hard copy of it, but that will be a little more basic or based on outlining. But this is one of those ones where I think when we're still just kind of in the momentum of getting our stuff together, this is just a good reminder of what that is. And the other thing I want to mention before I forget is that this book also comes with a workbook. If you're the kind of writer who likes to have homework, practices, reminders of how to do a thing that you read, you can also get the workbook alongside of it and go through and work the book. I don't have the workbooks. I can't show that. I'm not the kind of person who likes to do workbooks. I try to do my practice just based off of principle, and all that. But yeah, if you're a workbook type of writer, by all means you can get that too. So anyway, yeah, so again, it's The Plot Whisperer, and the subtitle is The Secrets of Story Structure Any Writer Can Master. And according to the back of the book, what you'll learn is that you'll learn how to use the power of the universal story, create plot lines and subplots that work together. You'll effectively use a scene tracker for maximum impact, which I'm going to show you guys, and I'm going to actually later on in the video, I have an Excel sheet that I made that simulates it. So I'll show you what I did on that Excel sheet if you want to duplicate it. And the reason why I'm not going to share it is because, again, this is based off of her plot line, and I'd rather not post something that she created, but I can show you how to recreate it pretty easily. Insert energetic markers at the right points in your story, and then show character transformation, the book's climax. Okay, so it is set up in 3 major parts, and then it also has kind of an introductory thing. The scene tracker looks like this, so you can kind of get a viewpoint of that when you get the book. And I believe the workbook's got the same thing in there, so if you want to, again, follow along through the workbook, you can, or you can create it in your Excel sheet, and again, I'll show you how that looks. The other thing it has is it's got the that's the scene tracker. So you also have the plot planner, which looks like this. So anytime you go through a chapter in the book, you're going to see how this particular plot line is affected. And what you'll notice is that it has a particular angle that's going. So you have to assume that your story is going to start over here and work its way up. And you'll notice that there's some dips in there. And you'll also notice too that there's points that are up and down. So the ones that are up are usually the ones that are based off of, I think it's either the main plot or the positive plot. And then the ones below are the character developments. Yeah. You have the above the line territory of the antagonist, which is where you start over here, which essentially is, the bad guy's got the upper hand, and you're trying to get the good guy to the upper point. And so this whole line shows you how to accomplish getting your character from the inciting incident and the low point, gradually up through all the different conflicts and whatnot until they have the big climax at the end. And then it shows also how to integrate your subplots, your character development, and all that. And it does it simply. One takeaway I think you can get from this line here is it's not complicated. One thing I think that's really easy for a lot of new writers to do, and even veteran writers who just have a lot to say, is we cram our books in with so much stuff, or not enough, right? It's usually one or the other. It's rarely like the right blend. And so one nice thing about this scene tracker and the plot planner is that it helps you keep your storyline simple, so that you do think about what the main conflict is. You think about what it takes to get your character to that point, but also what's the one or two things that's important for their journey along the way that you can competently tell without overbearing your reader with a bunch of stuff. Case in point, I haven't seen any of the new Jurassic World movies, but I was just reading or watching a review on the new one called Dominion earlier today, and the reviewers was basically just commenting how the whole thing was a mess. Now I know it's a movie, it's not a book, but movies and books, they follow the same basic guidelines where you're trying to get character from beginning to end with allegedly something will change, whether the character changes or the situation will change. But one of the complaints that the reviewer had is that there were so many things happening in the movie that it was just a complete mess from top to bottom. Now again, I can't comment whether or not that's true because I haven't seen either that movie or any of the last. The last one I saw was Jurassic Park 3. That was 20 years ago, so I'm a little behind. But just again, based on the criticism, I'm not sure that I'm really that interested in seeing the new Jurassic World, only because it doesn't sound like it really knows what it wants to be. So if we're in that situation where we're not sure what we're doing with the book, or if we're not sure what our book is supposed to be, that's where a book like this comes in handy, because it'll help us not only get back on track, but it'll show that we don't need to overbear it with a bunch of crap. We can just use what's important for the story. Okay. So I wanted to also give you a couple points here from the book itself that I thought was really interesting. One was about the universal story, but the other one was this one here from the very first chapter, sitting down to write. It's what do you have to do to write a book? So what Martha Alderson says is anyone can write a book. The trick is to write a good book. So long as you are honest and true to yourself, you have what it takes to write a good book. So if you're a new writer and you're worried that you can't write a good book, Alderson's telling you, yes, you can. But like anything, it's going to require some discipline, some practice. You're going to have some slip-ups along the way. No one gets it right the first time. And it's never easy. It's never easy, period. But you're going to have to certainly be proactive and dedicated and all that. But she's assuring you it can be done, and anyone who's ever published a book clearly has learned that lesson. So whatever state of the writing process you're in, you can get there. Depending on how far along will depend on how much work you have to do. But the other thing I wanted to show you guys was her. It was in her introduction about the universal story. Right here, it's pretty much it's page 9. It's not even. It's technically in the introduction. The introduction section. She says, my most important insight is this. All of us face antagonists in hurdles, hopes, and joys. And by meeting these challenges, we can transform our lives. I have come to believe that every scene in every book is part of a universal story that flows throughout our lives, both in our imaginations and in the reality that surrounds us. So every story ever told participates in this universal pattern as words grow and expand into sentences, paragraphs, and chapters. What is left after the end of the story has the potential to transform not only the writer, but all those who read the story as well. Okay, so, and she goes on and talk about how she teaches universal plot and all that. But I don't know, again, I find it's inspiring, and that's sort of the point of why I want to recommend this book. Even though we're in season 3, wanted to do this back in season 1, but I already had a full slate, and honestly, I had forgotten everything that she'd written because, again, I was reading it at a time when I was highly distracted. So I wanted to bring it back this season because, before we really get into the grit of, the genre books and all that, I just wanted to give you guys just a reminder that there is foundational stuff to follow along, and that this is one of the ones that really should be on your bookshelf, even if you're a veteran. I don't know if this is one of the classics that are out there, but I remember buying this because I'd already heard so much about it, and it was just, always on the shelf. Like, it was one of those ones that just, no matter how many times they would sell it, they would restock it. And I just figured, well, it must be an important book. And then for those of you who caught last season, when I did a book called Writing Deep Scenes, she's one of the authors, or one of the co-authors of that book. So the one I'm going to be doing next week, or next, I think I said I was going to do this bi-weekly. So the next episode, which I guess will be in 2 weeks, not one, which I'm still currently reading, so I'm actually going to be recording that much later than today. But I already told you guys I'll be doing some moving around, but that one is going to be by her other co-author for that book. So I wanted to kind of give you guys a 1-2 punch with this book and then the one that's coming next time, and then go back and reread Writing Deep Scenes, so you can kind of get the whole package deal. But yeah, anyway, so that said, let's take a quick look at what's in here. It's sort of the point of the series is to show you what's in the book, so you know why you should buy it. So like I said, there's 3 sections in this book. You have the first one is called The Outline of the Plot is, The Outline of the Plot, starting is half the battle. And each section has, if I can find it, is it before, that's page 19. All right, so yeah, so each section is divided by one of these big gray sections here. And so like I said, there's 3 of them, and then you get into the first one, the universal story. So basically the first section is she's just going back and reminding you what the universal story is, how to get started with it. So you have the universal story, the basics of plotting, and then developing themes. So these are like the building blocks of a story, and by having this already in mind, you'll be able to hopefully finish the book. And I know that's a tough thing to do for a lot of us to get to the end. But this kind of gets you, in that momentum before you really get going, so it makes it easier to finish. And again, if you keep it simple enough, it shouldn't be that difficult to get to the end. The question is, how long will it be? Will it be full? Will it be rich? Will it be messy? Planning ahead will help you sort of prepare for that. Part 2 is create the characters and setting. Who's part of this world and why? So basically, this is where you're dealing with characters. So you got who inhabits the plot. That's your protagonist, and all the helpful characters. You have who opposes the protagonist. So that would again be your antagonist. And then the devil's in the details. So that one I actually forgot what that is. So let's take a quick look. Okay, so it's talking about setting and how you integrate the characters into their world. And by the way, each chapter's got one of these plot whisper boxes here. So those would be like calls to action or challenges. So one example is, for this is again in the settings chapter. Cut out of a magazine a picture that represents the setting of the protagonist's ordinary world, like her house, community, country, planet, depending on the needs of your particular story. If you can't find something suitable, use a photo of a place that embodies the qualities you envision for your protagonist's home, neighborhood, community, and so on. Affixes visual representation of your main character's usual world above the beginning section, your plot planner to stimulate ideas, and then of course you have another one about exotic worlds, and it shows something at the middle, about the longest section. It talks about researching for authentic details. Basically, it's about making your story authentic. So it's a section just to remind you that it's not just about characters or plot, it's also about how you integrate them. And the other thing too is each section's got a fill-in for the scene tracker. So this one here, they're filling in the Great Gatsby. So you can see how the Great Gatsby looks, as part of a tracked scene. So that's also useful if you're learning how to use this stuff well. Is that every chapter or just the ending of sections? No, I think it's just the ending of sections that they do that. Yeah, because not every chapter has the graphical ending like that. But anyway, it's again useful to see how things are used. If you're the kind of person who has to not imagine how it's used, but actually see it in action. So anyway, part 3 is the journey, and so that's when we go back to the classic hero's journey. So you have opening the door, the middle of the journey, transformation, the climax, the denouement, which is the end and a new beginning, and then she gives you some parting advice and then final thoughts for your last chapters. So it's a really pretty comprehensive book all around. You could definitely use this in place of some of the others I've recommended if you don't want to saturate your bookshelf with all these ideas. But I always say read as many as you can, because they are going to overlap. At some point you're going to read a book that's telling you everything you already know, but it's solidifying reminders of what to do. And every book's got a different way of accomplishing it. So here's another scene chart here for Watership Down. You can see that. So just there are little nuggets of figures, of tables, just helpful resources throughout this book that really helps you to land home what you can learn from it. As far as the ending, I just want to take a quick look to see if there's any special. Yeah, so the last chapter, the final thoughts, is actually it's a good overview. It gives you the bullet list of her recommendations. I don't know if you can see that over here. It's let's see here. Over here, it reminds you how to use the scene tracker. So it doesn't end on a kind of just like a congratulations for ending your story. It does go back and gives you the checklist of things to look out for when you're done writing. It also has this interesting thing about it says release your ego when you release your book. So it even has a piece of advice for when you finish your book over here. And she says, as an example, you have 3 choices about how to react to feedback from others. Your body shrinks and withdraws, negative words crowd your mind, you give up, or you can become angry and belligerent, reject constructive criticism that could be helpful, or you can consider the feedback and intent thematically and wake up and move ahead. So, again, practical advice, even as far as how to receive criticism for your work. So, I don't know, there's just a lot of good stuff in here. So this is, again, The Plot Whisperer by Martha Alderson. Now, I want to take a quick pause right here so I can show you guys what it looks like on Excel. Remember that I'm not sharing this Excel sheet because it's based off of her property. So rather than post a link to the template, I want to show you guys that it's really easy to make yourself. It's just a matter of sitting down and doing the work. So if you have Excel or Google Sheets or any other program that allows you spreadsheets, you can duplicate this. And it's a good way to just stay on track with your story, so that if you don't want to overcomplicate your life with different programs like Plotter or anything like that, you can do so simply. It doesn't mean you shouldn't use Plotter or any other device like that, but if you want to keep it simple or straightforward, then certainly you can use it. So let's take a quick pause, and I'll show you the spreadsheet, and then we'll come back when I'm done. Okay, so this spreadsheet here is just an example of what you see in the book. I just basically designed my own. There's no nothing to download here. I made this myself, but you'll see that I filled in the scenes according to what Martha Alderson suggests, and then over here I have it tied to a visual. My goal was to try to make it do some kind of flow chart where you actually see the arcs. If you know how to do Excel well so that you can reflect that, I would say use your skills. I thought I had skills and I ended up with this, so I have a little bit more to do in order to show direction, but ultimately what I was trying to do is show the polarity shift between the different changes and try to judge it based on whether it's positive, negative, or neutral, and that way I can see whether or not the character is actually arcing in the proper way. Again, this doesn't really demonstrate exactly what I would want, but I think with some extra work or some extra effort, I probably could get it. But the point is, and you can see, by using an Excel sheet with some graphing capabilities, you could probably visualize whether or not your character is growing and changing and doing all the things. So this is, I think, a useful tool that she's given us. Again, I made this myself based off of her chart. So if you get the book and you want to create something similar, you will need to probably do this manually. I wouldn't put this on my site only because it's not my design. Again, this is based off of the chart from the book, so I would rather, that she has her own templates, which I haven't honestly checked in, but it might be there. You can always go look or request it. And again, don't forget she's got a workbook that goes with this, so you can always get the workbook too. And then if you don't want to build the chart, you could do your manual graphing with pencil. You can go old school; it still works the same. Just because everything's digital doesn't mean you have to go digital, but it certainly makes things nicer and it takes up less room. So yeah, if you don't know much about how Excel works, everything's based on formulas. There's a scratch pad I have here which shows what I hoped the meanings to be. This is mapped to this section over here, which is how I'm trying to get the chart to register. If you look at each box here, you'll see that most of them I just filled in as she wrote them. There's no formula. It's literally just, here's a box, here's the typing, and the only formulas actually I think are on the scratch pad, because if you go to the chart here, I think this is where you get the data, I believe. No, from the plus. I can never remember anymore. Oh no, you right click and then you get to select the data. When you select the data, you just select the columns here, or what I like to do is have a scratch pad that maps to the main page, so that if you look over here, you'll see where I have it maps to the spreadsheet here, and then it gives you the column name, and that's where it allows you to do the calculations. And then I'm using this column here in my chart. Remember, let me just make sure, select data. Yeah, you'll see that I'm using the plot shift section. If I click on it and edit, you'll see that's coming from my scratch pad. So it's just an easier way to kind of keep track of everything. That way I can still use the 3 columns for visual sake, but because they're mapped to the back scratch pad, I can still ultimately use the single column to draw the graph. So that's what that's about. Pretty straightforward, easy to do. Again, it's not accurate because it's not drawing the if there's a double negative, it's doing this. It's not going further down. But if you can train your brain, remember that this is good, then I think it's all fine. So anyway, that's the chart. Hopefully that gave you guys some tactics or advice on how to keep track of your character in a visual way in their journey and all that. So that's the spreadsheet as an example. Like I said, it's not that difficult to duplicate, so hopefully that made sense to you. But if you have any questions, just ask. Maybe I can explain it better in another video. But yeah, if that's something that you're into, go ahead and make that. If you don't like using spreadsheets, or if you don't like using supplemental resources, if you just got to do it all from up here, that's fine. Do what you need to do. But the idea is, you have your resources on hand. They're easy to duplicate. We don't need to do anything fancy. But again, if you have Plotter or some device that's similar, you prefer more in-depth planning, you do what works for you. Ultimately, you don't have to follow her plot advice. And let's be honest too, graphing is its own challenge. If you're an Excel expert, you can probably make it so it does a bit easier job going up and down. It's not perfect, but again, it's just the idea is, can you simulate the ability to track your scene and be able to identify how they're changing and which parts, whether it's external or internal, and so on. And then also being able to see how the antagonists and protagonists are kind of crossing paths, and while the protagonist is rising, the antagonist is falling, things like that. So, but yeah, I recommend this book. Again, my first read, I was distracted. I didn't pay that much attention to it. Second read, I was definitely much more in tune to it. I feel like I actually got a lot out of it. Again, I mean, I've read so many books. It's hard to say that I've learned anything brand new, but I do think that this is one of those books where, whether you're a beginner or intermediate, I think it's going to be worth your time. If you're advanced, you may not learn anything that new, or you'll already have a system in place that works well for you. And that would be another thing I would say is, if you have a system that works really well for you, you might not need the book. But again, I think she's really smart about how she approaches plotting. And if you are the kind of person who hates plotting, but you've always wanted to try it, or maybe you're not sure if you're doing it as well as you could be, I do think it's worth looking at. So yeah, just give it a try. It's not that expensive. I think I only paid $14.95 for this. Now I don't know what it cost in 2022, but at the time, $15 book, not bad. And you can always find sales on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. So, and I think it's one of those books that's going to be, it's in stock pretty much all the time. So yeah, check it out. Our next session will be, I guess, in 2 weeks, I think is what I decided I wanted to do. I actually recorded an update video for the site a while back. I never posted it. It was long and meandering, and I don't think it was particularly valuable, so I didn't post it. But what I said in that video is that I do want to do Writer's Bookshelf every first and third Friday rather than every Friday. Partly because A, it'll give you more time to catch up. B, I don't want to overwhelm you guys with all this work. It also just allows the season to be paced a little better, so the content engines continue to remain charged. Whereas when it's every week, it's overwhelming, and I don't feel like a lot of people are really getting the most out of it because it's so crammed. In fact, I'm tempted to maybe even do less frequently than that. But for now, I want to start with just every first and third Friday and see if that is well received. And you guys let me know in the comments. Do you like having it every other week? Would you want me to go back to every week? Do you want it just once a month? I can do that too. So whatever works best for you guys, let me know. And then just let me know your experiences with the books. I don't get a lot of feedback for the Writer's Bookshelf series. I do for my other videos, like with the software. But I do want to know, this is a series I care a lot about, and I do want to know if it's helping you guys at all. So make sure you share in the comments whether or not it's helpful, especially if you've got this far into it. So that's all for today. We'll see you for the next one, and hope you have a good week and good couple weeks. Whenever I see you again, or whenever you see me again, since technically, you're watching my video, not the other way around, because again, that would just be very weird, and that would be a scary time. So we're not there. But yeah, come back for our next one, and it's going to again be another, not a plotting book, it's going to be another craft book regarding just general, but then after that we're going to go into some genre stuff, and we'll start bouncing around a little bit. It's not going to be like straight genre from here on out. I'll come back to the occasional helpful advice book, but yeah, I just want mix it up a little bit, so it should be fun. That's all for today. Come back and we'll we'll see you for the next one. Thanks again for watching, and again, have a great day, and like, subscribe, do all the things YouTubers tell you to do. I gotta remember to tell you that. I do this all off the cuff. I don't practice it. I don't transcribe it. I don't have a teleprompter. It's all just off the cuff, and sometimes I forget to tell you the important stuff. So if I forget to tell you the important stuff, just do it anyway. Like, subscribe, do all the things YouTubers tell you to do, but not everything, because some YouTubers are crazy. Okay. That's all. Thanks again. Until next time. Bye.